So I want to welcome again everyone and thank everyone to taking the time to be here tonight. And I'm gonna go through a few things that I call essentials because nowadays you don't need much to start making music. All you need pretty much is a computer and some kind of maybe interface to make things easier. But when building a home studio, there's a few things that I consider essential. So a computer, some time of MIDI keyboard or controller, a pair of headphones. Um, and if you want to record acoustic instruments or vocals, then you'll need maybe an interface. But when you start off keeping it simple, it's better so you don't get overwhelmed. And then here on my screen, I have pretty much like a basic setup where you have your main computer and then you have your MIDI interface that is going to be connected to your computer. You also have a MIDI keyboard that is going to be connected to your computer. You have a pair of monitors that will be connected to the interface, as well as the microphone that will be connected to the interface. If you own external synthesizers or hardware, then you can connect those via MIDI to the interface if the interface has those type of connections, and also to your inputs. And we're going to talk about every component individually, so we can have a bit of an understanding on all of that. Let's see here. So when it comes to choosing the right computer, there are some minimum requirements. Macs are well known for in the music industry, but there's nothing wrong with using a PC or even a Hackintosh. And for all of this, you're going to have some minimum requirements. So you're going to have, for a CPU, you're going to need a 2.4 gigahertz with a quad processor power, a memory of at least 4 gigabytes of RAM, and that's the speed of your drive. A storage, for storage, you need a minimum of 500 gigabytes of internal storage. And a 64-bit operating system, since most softwares and plugins now are 64-bit. And a 13-inch screen. And then for the recommended requirements, you're going to need a CPU of at least 3.5 gigahertz with an 8-core processor. And all this is so the computer reacts faster to all these like softwares that are very like heavy with processing. A memory of 16 gigabytes of RAM and storage of 1 terabyte. An ideal 17 to 27-inch monitor or a dual monitor if you have a 13-inch screen. And I also like to use external hard drives as it helps me keep my sessions and files organized, and also will help the computer run smoother. So I like to store and run my sessions from an external hard drive. So I recommend using 7200 RPM drive, and that's the revolutions per minute, and that's how how fast the drive will react. If you use anything lower than that, you might not be able to run your sessions. And for that, I like the G drives. There are my favorites. And then they start at $69 for a portable 1 terabyte. I also like to have another one for all the sound libraries.
Janelle?
Yes.
Not sure if you switched the slide.
Oh, no, not yet.
Okay, not yet, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in case anyone wants to make notes on those. Yeah, not yet. So for that, I like to have another one to store all the libraries, because once you start, you may think, oh, I have 500 gigabytes of storage in my computer, but once you start installing software, installing plugins, and downloading all those sound libraries, then you're going to run out of storage very quick, and that will make your computer slow. So now we're going to talk a little bit about DAWs. Well, let me just leave it here because I don't have a slide for that. So a DAW, it's a digital audio workstation, and that it's going to let you record, edit, and mix audio. So there are so many out there, and there are some leading industry leading in this sorry industry leading standard ones, but no DAW is wrong. Like you said, you started with GarageBand, and if it works for you, it works. Just make sure that you know that software inside out. And then if you don't own a DAW and you're planning to get an interface or a MIDI controller, always check for combos that are available for software and hardware. So the most common DAWs right now, and for all these, there's going to be always a light version. And then as you pay a little bit more, then you'll get more instruments, more functionality, and a lot of sample packs too as well. So we have Ableton Live, which is for Mac and PC, and the standard version starts at $449. So this one is a bit pricey just for the standard version. And the light version is free with most hardware purchases. You also have Logic, which is only for Mac, so that's one thing to consider. And it starts at 200, but it gives you a lot of instruments, a lot of samples to work with. And then we also have Pro Tools, which is the one you're gonna see in pretty much all the big recording studios. And it's one of the lead in the industry. And that you can buy a perpetual license for $600, or you can have a subscription plan, which starts at $29.99 a month. And this one has really good benefits for that monthly subscription, because you'll have tons of plugins. And then you can also collaborate with other musicians in real time. And that's just to mention a few. We also have FL Studios, and this one is for Mac and PC. They start at $139, and this one is very popular with hip hop and EDM producers. Also, we have Presonus Studio One, which is for Mac and PC. It also starts at $100, but then it comes free with the purchase of a Presonus interface. And then I have two more that I want to talk about, and it's Cubase. It's for Mac and PC, and they start at $99 for the light version, and GarageBand, which is free with an iPhone, an iPad purchase, or any Mac computer. And if you own a Mac, this is a good way to start and get to know how a DAW works and start to know like your way around it. So then you can move on to making a decision on which DAW will be perfect for you. So we're gonna move on now to MIDI keyboards. And then I have a few up here that are some of the favorite ones right now. And when you think of a keyboard or a MIDI controller, just think of them as a giant mouse. So every knob will have a functionality, and it'll be easier than just going to with your mouse and trying to kind of like tweak and control everything. So a keyboard is a controller device with a piano or synth style keys, and usually a selection of knobs, buttons, and sliders. And all these transmit MIDI data to external sound modules like synthesizers, computer software synthesizers, and so on. So most keyboard controllers have no sound generating capability, but almost any keyboard synthesizer workstation can act to control sounds and parameters of other devices. So the real advantage of them are versatility and portability. So they give you control over virtually the entire range of modern music hardware and software, while sometimes being so compact that you can pretty much fit them on your computer bag. So this one is like a pretty like small little guy that I can take with me anywhere. And when choosing the right one, consider the following: how much space you have in your studio. Do you play two-handed? Do you play single-handed? Do you want to be able to do keyboard splits? And then the keyboard splits, it's like having an instrument on every octave of the keyboard. So you can have like different instances running in your keyboard. And your answer to these questions will determine how many keys you'll want on your controller: 25, 49, 61, or 88. And then the keyboard action type. Do you want like a synth feel, like, so it's like really soft when you play, a semi-weighted, or a weighted hammer action that is the more like the feel of a real piano? So the controller, knobs, sliders, modulation, and pitch wheel gives you hands-on real-time control over tweaking the synth filter cutoff, the resonance, the amp envelopes, and so forth. So this provides much more authentic analog feel over using a mouse. And some controllers now include auto mapping technology that sets up the knobs and faders to correspond to specific software applications. And if they're not mapped, auto map already, you can always map them to any software. I know that Novation, it's well known for pretty much being mapped to Ableton. So if I'm on the session view, all these pads will be mapped to launch key clips on Ableton. And then if I click on any effect, all these knobs are going to correspond to some parameters on the effects. So if I have a filter, I know that this is the cutoff, this is the resonance, and so forth. So they're already mapped. But you can always map any keyword to any software. So just keep that in mind. Another thing that the keys have is aftertouch, and this feature allows you to change the tone or sound of a note after it's struck, like the way singers do or wind players do. So I think Rolly keyboards are known for that. So if you kind of like press your finger and keep it holding down, like you can have like different modulations or tonalities in your sound. Also consider when you're getting a MIDI keyboard, if you need MIDI ins and outs. Right now, on this side, I have an external synthesizer that is connected to my keyboard, so I can control the sounds over there, as well as I can control or use my arpeggiators on my keyboard in my software as well. Do you want to connect via USB? Do you want to use it with your iPad or iPhone? Or do you just want a 5-pin conventional MIDI jack? And then here we have some examples of budget-friendly portable MIDI keyboards. The LS's is a very good price for a 49 key. You still have some pads, you still have some knobs to control some parameters on the software. And all these, even though they're small, they have great functionality and features. And then you can also get a bigger version of most of these guys that I have on the screen. Let's see. So another thing you'll want to get next is a pair of headphones or studio monitors. And why we call them monitors and not speakers is because they're designed to produce relatively linear phase frequency response. So in other words, there's no emphasis or the emphasis on frequencies. So the loudspeaker gives an accurate reproduction of the tonal qualities of the source audio. So it's not color or transparent. So, sorry, it's transparent and not color. So when you look at a speaker, you'll see two components. You'll see the tweeter, which is the high frequency driver, sorry, which takes care of the reproduction of high and upper mid frequencies, the treble. And then the woofer, which is the low frequency driver. And this one recreates the low and mid lows frequencies. So it's larger because it has to be able to produce the longer wavelengths that are characteristic of lower frequencies. So if you see here, the chart on the top, these are high frequencies. They travel short distances, and the wavelength, it's like kind of like more like together, the up and then down. And then the low frequency wave, there are longer, and then they travel pretty far. So that's why you can always like hear or feel the bass from far away, but the high frequencies will always like cut right away. Sorry. So while it is possible to get a good mix on headphones, studio monitors give you a better representation of the sound field. Studio monitors can be pricey, unlike a pair of headphones, and they come in 5, 7, and 8 inches. And that's referring to the size of the woofer. So a small woofer won't have as a good bass representation as maybe an 8 inch, like the ones that I have back here. But when you have a small space, um, if you have 8 inch speakers, can create problems because then the bass will build up in all the corners in the room, and then will give you a bad representation of your mix. So small woofers work better for small spaces, and big woofers um, will give you a better representation of the bass, but will create build up problems in small spaces, especially if you don't have any acoustic treatment. So here we have some studio monitor options, and I kind of did. I'm gonna put this PDF at the end so you can all have it and see the difference between the speakers. So these ones are under 200, and this mostly is just for one speaker, so you have to consider that. So if you want a pair, sometimes it gets to like 400 or 600 depending on the speaker. And as you can see, when the five, which is the 5 inch speakers, these will have a. Let me see if I can move this because I have you guys on the on the image. So your bass won't go all the way to like 30 or 40 like other speakers do, like the 7 inches or the 8 inches. So some of these will start your frequency response from 54 or 45 all the way to 30 kilohertz. And then let's see. But there are other more, sorry. So then here you have under 300, you have 7 inch um, woofers. And then as you can see, they'll give you a better representation of bass. So the frequency response will start at 40 or 30 in some cases, depending on the brand. And then you'll have the ones under 500, and this is also for each monitor, so you have to consider that it's each monitor is going to be like $400 or $500. And these are, I went really low in the prices because you can get like really crazy with all these super expensive monitors. But what they'll have is they'll have better drivers, they'll have better components, they'll have like high quality components. Right now, the ones you see a lot in home studios are the KRKs and the Yamahas. Those are the most popular ones. And the new generation of KRKs before they were not flat response. They used to have a boost in the low end. So that won't give you a good representation of your mix because then you'll think, oh, I have a lot of bass, and then when you go take your mix somewhere else, then you're missing all the bass because you thought you had and you didn't add enough bass to your mix. But now the KRKs, the Generation 4, which are up here, those, they have an app that you can EQ the speaker to your room. So it'll kind of like analyze the acoustics in your room, and then it'll pretty much tell you how to EQ the speaker. So it's a really good feature now on the new models. And then the Yamahas are very popular. They're a little more expensive, but the good thing about them is that they're very accurate. So you're gonna have a flat representation of your mix, which is what you want. You don't want anything color the low end or the high end, because then when you make all those like mixing decisions, then you might cut all the lows because you have like that low boost on your speaker. And then the same thing when you go somewhere else to hear your mix, it's like, what happened to my bass? Where is it? The only thing with the KRKs, even though most of these speakers will have switches in the back to kind of like work with the EQ or the bass response in your room, you still have to add some acoustic treatment to your room. So for all this, the price difference will be the size woofer. You get higher quality components and a more accurate representation of your sound. Um, Perfect. And then there's also these little guys here, which are the iLoud. They're very good for small spaces, especially because these speakers will take a lot of space on your desk or in your room. These guys were very impressive. When I heard them, it was like they were pretty loud, they were really small. You can connect them through Bluetooth, and then a pair of them, it's only like $2.99, which is like really good price. And then they have a flat linear response, so you're hearing what you're supposed to hear. So headphones are also available with a flat response, meaning no frequency boost. Like the Beats, they're well known because they have a good like a boost in the low end. And for mixing, we like to use open back headphones. So the mix is interacting with the surroundings, just like you were listening to them in speakers, in monitors. Um, and also will not have a bass buildup in your headphone. So that will cloud the mix. Like when you're mixing and you have closed headphones, closed back headphones, sorry, the bass will build up in your ear pretty much, and it will cloud your mix. So while closed back headphones are good for recording, so it doesn't bleed into the microphone. So if you're recording vocals, then use closed back headphones, so then that sound doesn't come through the microphone. Or you can have the best of both worlds. So you can have semi open back headphones, and it's all about preference and functionality. Um, and also, they have to be comfortable because you're going to be wearing them for long periods of time. That's another thing to consider. So deciding between headphones and monitors will depend on if you have roommates or and they're not gonna like you blasting your speakers. Then consider getting headphones. They can take some speakers can take up some space, as you can see. And then also consider if your headphones or your monitors can connect straight to your computer and they don't need an amplifier for that or an interface. But the most important thing about all this is knowing how your speakers, how your headphones sound. So always reference music that you're familiar with. Um, Make notes of how they sound in your system, like if it boosts the low end, it boosts the high, or so forth. So you have a good reference when it comes to making mixing or even sound design decisions. Always reference and take breaks also so you don't get ear fatigue. So now that we talked, here I have a list of some open back or semi-open back studio monitors, and then the different prices. Again, the prices, if you pay a little more, you'll get better quality, but not all the time. Also, look at if they're lightweight, if they're comfortable, and then I'll pass on this as well so you can have all this list of the best headphones nowadays. I like these old school Sonys because they're really good for recording, and they have a flat response as well. And then the Bayer Dynamics are really good for mixing. I love them. So awesome. So let's move on. Now that we talk about the most essential things to get you started, then you can think about maybe adding a little more to your setup, especially if you want to record your vocals and if you want to start recording instruments or any other acoustic instrument. So the job of an audio interface is to take that audio signal and translate it into your computer through what it's called an analog to digital conversion. So this converts the sound that you're hearing using a microphone and a cable into the interface into ones and zeros. to represent sound. And then that digitized sound can be stored, edited, or mixed on your computer. And then the last job of the interface will be playing back out of your computer to your monitor speakers, reversing the process through something that is called digital to analog. So when it goes into your computer, it's analog to digital, and then when it comes out to your computer, it's digital to analog. Excuse me. So most interfaces will have a preamp. And what a preamp does is a single piece of recording equipment that is designed to amplify low-level signals, like microphones, guitars, etc. While the audio interface, it will send that signal to your computer, effectively translating real music into digital music. So you'll need both a preamp and an audio interface to record, unless your interface has a preamp already installed, like most of the interfaces nowadays. So when we talk about preamps, I have my little interface here. So here where you connect your microphone or your instrument line cable, these are the preamps. And this will be the gain for your preamp. And then the preamps are installed in the interface. So then the interface has other components like monitoring, headphones, and then back here, then you have your outs for your monitor speakers. And then you also have something that is called phantom power, which we're going to talk about that a little later. Excuse me. So depending on budget, it's going to be a factor when you're choosing these interfaces, and also other things. I always had a teacher that told me, like, just save a little bit more and always get it right the first time, because then you'll end up spending more. And you're going to consider the number of inputs and outputs. So this one that I have here has 2 inputs and 2 outputs. The one that I have back here, it's an 8-input interface, which is here I have some options where you have the Focusrites, which are really good interfaces, and they have really good preamps. Also in the budget ones, you have the Behringers, which have Midas preamps, which are known for live sound. So they're really good quality preamps for a good price. And then you also have the Presonus. And then the more you spend, the more options you'll have. You'll have more IOs. You'll have different monitoring options. You'll have these really cool LED lights will tell you if your signal is too hot or not. So the more you spend, the more, like, the better qualities, components, and more features you'll have. So consider how many instruments you have or hardware gear you are going to record or connect at once. Also, if you have MIDI synthesizers like the one I have here, consider having then MIDI inputs for that interface, so you can connect to your software through your interface. Also, if it's a FireWire or a USB connection, and if it needs an external power supply, or like this one, it can be powered with the computer and you don't need an external power supply for your interface, like the one I have back there. So usually for the ones that have like 2 inputs, you can connect straight to your computer and you won't need a power supply. But for bigger ones, you might need an external power source. So the difference between the different audio interfaces, it's, as I say, like, you're gonna have more features. You're gonna have better preamps. You're gonna have better components. And some of these preamps, there are on all these, I think that they're all like really clean preamps. They don't have any noise, but anything cheaper might introduce a lot of noise into your recordings. Some of these, let me go down. like the universal audio and then the universal audio solo and the SSL, they have their color, they have their sound, and that's why people like them because they kind of like add that little bit of juju to your sound. So these are iconic preamps like the Neve, the API, the SSL, and the universal audio. People like them because they have their character, they have their flavor. The Neve is well known because they have tube amps, so that's why it gives that little warmer sound to your recordings. And then the universal audio, the twin, um, a lot of people like this one. They also come with tons of plugins emulating those analog preamps like the SSL, the Neve, the API, which a lot of people like a lot. And then you have the SSL solid state, which is a really good two input interface. And it has the preamps that the SSL regular console has, which are loved by most engineers um, back in the old school days, kind of thing. And then, as I say, these are more on the budgets because then in the universal audio, you can get an 8 input, and that one's going to cost you around like $3,000. You'll have better preamps, better components, better quality sound, but you can get the same sound, and no one will notice if you recorded it on a Focusrite or a Presonus or a Behringer, or you recorded it on a Neve or on a universal audio interface. And then now moving to microphones a little bit. Sorry. A microphone, it's a transducer. So what it does, it converts acoustic energy into electrical energy. In other words, it works with sound pressure levels to convert that into a signal, an electrical signal. So there are different applications for the different microphone types. The two most common types that we're going to talk today are the dynamic microphones and the condenser microphones. So I have here a dynamic microphone, which are the ones mostly used for live sound. And you have your condenser microphones, which are the ones that we see all the time in the studio. And there's also, this is a large diaphragm condenser microphone. And then we also have small diaphragm condenser microphones. These ones are most used for vocals. These ones are mostly used for stereo recordings. So you'll always see them in pairs. And let's talk a little bit about the condenser microphones. Sorry. Okay. So microphones in general, they produce a really low output signal level. And in order to be recorded or reproduced, it needs an amplifier. So that's why we need those amplifiers on the interfaces. So that signal can be amplified to a level that we can use it and reproduce that signal. So there are small diaphragm, like I said, and large diaphragm. And then the condenser microphones are usually used in studios to pick up sounds with great detail and accuracy. They are very delicate, and they are used to pick up and amplify delicate sounds. So they respond better to high frequencies, but are very sensitive and pick up a lot of noise. So that's why you always see them in microphone stands, like unlike the dynamic mics that you see a lot of singers holding them in their hands. You cannot do that with a condenser microphone because it will pick up all the noises and all the handheld movements. So that's why also they're not suitable for rooms that don't have any acoustic treatment, because they'll pick up pretty much any noise. Like I can hear my neighbor's AC. I can hear in New York, you can hear the trucks, the fire trucks, the ambulances, the honking, and all that. especially if your room is not treated. If you have a singer that has a bracelet, a chain, or something dangling, you're gonna pick up all those sounds in your recordings, and then that pretty much will ruin your take. And you might not notice that at the moment, but once you start applying compression and you start processing that signal, what a compressor does is brings all the low level signal or sounds in a signal, and it'll bring them up. So once you start adding all those things, then you'll notice all those sounds that you didn't notice when you were recording. Um, okay. And that's what we call the noise floor. So the noise floor will be all the unwanted noise that is not the signal that is being recorded or monitored. And then the large diaphragm condensers mostly are used for guitars, for vocals, and you can also use them for guitars and other instruments. And then these little guys, as I say, they're used in pairs and they capture stereo signals. So they're used a lot for pianos, string instruments, and also you'll see them as overheads in the drum kits as well. And don't be fooled by those little guys. They pick up every single little noise and nuance, and they're very delicate as well. So condenser mics use phantom power. So these microphones, they need an extra 48-volt charge from the preamp to be, and that's why they create that high output. And then that's something that you have to consider when buying a microphone, if you already have an interface, or buying an interface. Just make sure that it has that 48-volt, which I think most interfaces now, they do have it. And what it does, that 48-volt gives that extra charge and that extra to the signal, so you don't have to crank your gain on your preamp. And then you can have that signal to a usable level. Excuse me. Okay, so here I have some budget microphones that are under 100. I have some others from 100 to 200. And from the 100, I always like Audio Technica microphones. And then the SC Electronics are very good for vocals overall, even on the cheap version or the more expensive. Most of the Rode mics, like the MXL 770 and the NT2A, which I have in the other slide, those are very popular amongst rapper. They have a rich low frequency and a bright top end. So that's another thing you have to consider when getting a microphone, because some of the microphones will have more of a harsh high frequencies or will boost a little bit more of the lows. So when you are mixing, then you can take that into consideration when applying EQ and all those other processing. And then I'm not a fan of USB microphones, but the Blue Snowball, it's a really good USB microphone. And then the good thing about that is you won't need an interface. You can just connect it straight to your computer. The only thing with those, not this one in particular, but the really cheap ones can introduce a lot of noise. And then the only way to control the gain on the microphone is through the system preferences. So you have no control in your DAW for the gain of that microphone. And and then down here, I have another tier of microphones. The Rode, like I said, is well known or well used with rappers. The Audio Technicas in any level, they'll be really good. I've used those a lot. And then we have cheaper versions of the Neumanns, which are a lot used for vocal recordings. So the TLM 102, I think it's around the 600 versus the other Neumanns that are like 3,000, 4,000, etc. And then it still have that rich and pretty much like particular sound of the Neumann microphones. So the difference between the prices, again, like the interface will be the components, the quality of the components, and also um, some of these microphones will have a low cut. Oh, sorry, here. So we'll have a low cut of the lows, usually at 80 or at 100 hertz. It will also have a minus 10 or minus 20 dB cut. If your signal is too hot, you can cut it at the microphone instead of cutting it at your preamp, because then sometimes you want the sound of the preamp and not the mic. And then also we'll have a different polar patterns. So most microphones, I'm gonna hear the polar patterns. Most microphones are cardioid. So meaning it picks up straight directly in front of it, and it will pick up a little bit on the sides. But then you'll notice when someone goes out off axis, you'll notice in your recording the difference in sound between the from the source. Also, you'll have a figure eight, which is you can have two singers on each side. It will reject from the sides, and it'll pick up again from the front, and then a little bit on the sides. But you always want to have your singer like looking straight at the microphone, so you don't have that change in volume that you will hear when they're moving a lot. And then also it has an omni, which pretty much will record 360. So that's the difference between like spending a little bit on a microphone or just waiting and spending a little more, because you'll have more features and you'll have better components as well. And let's see, now we can talk about dynamic microphones. So dynamic microphones, they work best to record loud sounds. So that's why you always see them in live sound applications. The output is slower than a condenser, but that's appropriate if the signal you're capturing is very strong. They are used for live sound applications, and then they can be handheld without introducing any noise to your recordings. They are used as well in recording studios, not just in live sound. You can see them in things like guitar amps, drum kits, and even vocals. There's a lot of records that have been recorded with the SM58. And also Michael Jackson's Thriller album, his vocals were completely recorded on the SM7B, which is this one down here, and is a dynamic microphone. This one in particular has a boost in the low end. A lot of people like it a lot for broadcasting, but I'm in love with that microphone, as well as the SM58, which are really good microphones that are going to last you for a long time. While condenser microphones respond better to high frequency, dynamic microphones will respond better to mid and low frequencies. They are very reliable, they're durable. You can drop a dynamic mic, it will survive. Don't drop a condenser mic because it won't have the same chance. And the condenser microphones are also, they're not good with humidity or changes in temperature. So that's why you won't see them that much on on the stage, on live sound applications. So dynamic microphones don't need power, don't need batteries, and they cost a fraction of what condenser microphone does. They're capable of smooth, extended responses, and the output level is high enough to go straight into most mic preamps with an ideal signal to noise ratio. And that's meaning the level of the desired signal versus your background noise. So while condenser microphones is if you start cranking your gain on the preamp, then you'll start hearing all the noise floor. You'll start hearing like your all your electrical components. If you're in If you have an AC, a fan, or any of that will um, be accentuated if you crank up the preamp. While with a dynamic microphone, you can crank that preamp all the way up and you won't hear much of that noise, of that floor noise. Since dynamic microphones have a low output, you can always use what we call a mic signal booster. And what this does, it gives you extra 25 dBs of gain. So then you don't have to crank your preamp all the way up. Then you can add this little guy, and then it will clean your signal from any noise. And then it'll add that extra 25 dBs of gain. Um, there's also a version down here. I hope that you can see this. I don't know if I have you all covering it. Shure now came out with a cheaper version of the SM7B, and it's the MV7, and that one is it has both connection, USB and XLR, so you can use it without an interface or you can use it with an interface. And it's a dynamic microphone, and it's one of my favorite mics out there. Um, and it costs a fraction of what the other one does. And then moving on to other things that, excuse me, that are essential, and sometimes we forget about them because speakers won't come with cables, microphones won't come with the cables, any of the gear that we buy won't come with a cable. Here we have pretty much all the different cables. The ones that you're going to use the most are XLRs, which are connections for the microphones. The TS, if you play guitar, bass, those are for guitar and bass, and those are unbalanced. And you can tell between those 2/4 inch, you can tell which one is balanced and unbalanced because the balance will have the two stripes, the two rings. And that meaning that one is grounded, the other one is not grounded. So that's why when you connect a guitar, you hear that noise because it doesn't have the ground. It doesn't have it's not grounded. And those cables cannot go for long runs. Like the XLR, you can have 100 feet run of the cable without introducing any noise into your recording. But the instruments will bring some noise and introduce some noise. And then down here, I have another um, chart that pretty much explains every cable. Um, but I feel like nowadays RCAs are not used a lot. You still have some things that can connect RCA, but the XLR and the TRS or the 1/4 inch are the most common now in home studios, as well as the USB and Firewire. So another thing to consider when buying, when getting all these things, other things that are essential will be pop filters. So the pop filters, I like to have double pop filter because my voice is very breathy, and sometimes with my accent, all those P's, all those T's will come even like more through the microphone. So we have this little pop filter here that I put on my condenser, plus this extra one. And the thing with condenser microphones, since they pick a lot of noise, um, you usually record at a distance of a foot. While dynamic microphones, then you kind of have to kind of like yell into the microphone. You have to kind of like almost like kiss the microphone to get that adequate level. And then these ones, they already have a pop filter integrated inside the capsule. So if you see, I don't think you can see it here, but it'll have that foam inside. So it'll have this type of pop filter on the inside. But I like to, even though it'll bring the signal down a little bit, I like to have double pop filters always. Just because my voice is very breathy and very poppy, and all those sounds, you don't want them in your recording because they're pretty hard to take out. Um, Another thing you'll need is mic stands, because these ones you can handheld, but the condenser microphones you need to have them on a stand because they'll record all sorts of knocks, bumps, vibrations, and that will ruin your take. So when it comes to mic stand take into consideration how heavy is your microphone. So don't get a cheap mic stand if your microphone is heavy, because then you end up damaging your microphone. Also consider the space. If you don't have a lot of space, there are these arm stands that you can have clipped to your desk, or these little guys, or these tabletop microphone stands as well. And and then I talk about the pop filters. The pop filters will reduce the sibilance and the P's. And then also, let me go back to my speakers. Um, every time you see speakers, you most of the time you see them in speaker stands, or if they're on the desk, they're usually on risers, and then they're also placed on these foams. And then what that does, um, it's pretty much like if you have your speaker just on any surface, that will change your sound of the speaker. And sometimes you'll have the bass will resonate and will pretty much like bounce into those surfaces and will create that buildup of bass. So even on speaker stands, I took mine's off, but you need some kind of isolation pad that will help you deal with all those low frequencies. And I think that's all for today, for tonight. And I want to thank you all for sticking with me. And I appreciate you took the time to be here tonight. And now I think we can answer some questions.
Awesome. That was so great, Janelle. Thank you so much. Super informative. I just learned a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, does anyone have any questions that they can think of?
I do.
Yeah, go for it. Just really quick, Janelle, maybe you want to unshare your screen just so they could see you as
Yes.
when you're responding? Okay, cool.
Stop sharing. Okay. There.
I actually have a couple of questions. 3 of them. One is, so the first question is, what is the difference between a monitor and just a traditional set of good speakers?
Well, regular speakers like the Bose and all that,
Yeah.
those speakers, they're gonna have boost on frequencies. So they're gonna boost the low end. They're gonna boost maybe the high end, or the mids, so you can hear the speech better. Monitors are flat, so they have no boost or no or decoloration, no
Okay.
boost or the emphasize on any of these frequencies. So what you're hearing, it's what you're it's true to the source.
Got
And
it. So it's
technically,
reflecting real sound.
exactly, real
Okay.
sound, exactly,
Any enhancing of
exactly.
mid
So
level.
if you're mixing in some regular speakers, and if they have a boost in the low end, then when you're making those mixing decisions, it's like, oh, I have a lot of low end, but so I'm gonna cut that low. And then you go maybe to another speaker, and then you're like, oh wait, what happened to my lows? I don't have any bass. So that's why they need to be flat in the response. So then when you're mixing, you can make those decisions.
Okay. My second question is acoustic treatment. Do you have any suggestions? I see you've got the Hex phone.
Yeah, I have some.
Okay.
So pretty much there's it's like it's another like whole topic that we can always like go, because then
Yeah, I was
there's
gonna say,
also
there's like photos of like podcasters in their closets with like blankets over their head.
exactly,
You know, trying
that
to,
is good, but sometimes like depending on what you're recording, the style of recording, you don't want to take all those reverberations out of your room, because then it will sound too like flat, and then you have to start applying all these effects to kind of compensate for the room acoustics.
Got it.
But for mixing, what I had is like usually if you have your speakers and you go with the mirror, every time you see, in this case, this way, if you see your mirror, then you have to place you see your speaker, then you have to place acoustic treatment.
Got
If
it.
you move and then you see the speakers, you have to place, because it's about the bouncing of the frequencies in your room. But it all depends on what size of speaker you have and also the room acoustics. And then for the bass, there's also these bass traps that goes in the corners, because then the bass always gets traps in the corner and then they start building up. So in my case, I know that I have to be right in front of the speakers, and then there have to be in a specific angle that we can talk about all that maybe on another workshop. Because the speakers have to be in an angle, and then you have your sweet spot where you're going to be mixing. And then I know if I go to the back of my room, the bass buildup is incredible. It's like you can hear that bass like just building up and making it's going to get louder and louder and louder.
Right.
And then with the high frequencies, it's more about like bouncing, how they bounce and then they die in the room.
Got it.
So we can talk about that definitely.
Yeah, that might be an interesting next workshop when we talk about how you lay out your studio.
Exactly.
Yeah, like speaker placement and
exactly, because there's a lot of software that can tell you where to place them, where is your problems in your room, where you have your problems and all that.
Are you dealing with drywall or hardwood, carpet, etc.?
Exactly.
I remember being in a physics class, like a physics lab, and they were
That's
talking
physics.
studio. Yeah, like something about the speakers and then like deconstructive waves and like constructive waves, just like canceling
Exactly.
out. And that's why there's like that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You want to be sort of in the crosshair of the
exactly.
background, and yeah.
Every surface, the sound will bounce out of that surface, so that will create different problems. And it's like even like when you're recording someone, it's not good if they have a hat, because even that will kind of like bounce off your hat, and then it can create face problems when you're recording. It's a lot of like
Science.
Physics.
And my last question is, if you have a total budget, how would you divvy up percentages? Like I've got $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. Like, where do I put my money? Where do I sort of save? Like, where do I invest? Like, do I spend my money on speakers? Like,
I will invest on a good computer, a good system. Because if your computer is not running properly and it's just crashing all the time, then there's no point of having good speakers. So always start with your computer, get it right. Especially with Macs now that you can't really upgrade. So if you buy it, you bought it the way it is. So that's why I'm building my Hackintosh.
Yeah, what's the worst? Like what?
Because I can build it the way I want it, and I can always upgrade the components, but I still running Mac software in it. The next thing I will invest is definitely speakers and interface, because controllers, they're pretty cheap now, and they do, like, even like the small one will do the same functionalities as the big ones. The only thing I will have, it's just a little more like faders, but I will definitely invest in a good interface with good preamps, like the Universal Audio or the SSL. And then I will also get like really good, nice pair of speakers and a good microphone then after that. But for microphones, you can get away with a dynamic microphone like the SM58, which is $100 microphone, and it's great for any applications. And especially when you have no control over the sound around you, a dynamic microphone is the best choice over a condenser microphone.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm looking into figuring out how to record my own vocals at home. And one of the things that I was looking into was getting, because I don't have any acoustic treatment in my room, is getting like a reflection filter, which is a thing I've seen people use. It's like kind of a little you know, sort of semicircle of foam that you sing behind. Do you have any recommendations for those?
For those, let me see if I can access, because there's a lot. There's one that actually, it's a really good one. It's called, it's actually like, it looks like a ball, and it's just like a foam ball that you put around your microphone.
Yeah. Is that the eyeball?
The eyeball, yeah.
The eyeball.
The eyeball is really good.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then also, those microphones, what it'll do, it'll reject pretty much the sound around it, but you'll still have some noise coming in, like all those like kind of like U-shape filter types. The eyeball has really good reviews. I haven't used it, but what I usually do if I have a microphone, and I know that I have on my right side right now, I have the neighbor's AC unit. I can hear it over here. So what I'll do is I'll move my microphone and I'll place it with the back of it to that source noise. So then you don't pick up a lot of that noise. Stay away from windows, stay away from ACs. I'll turn off my fans. I'll turn off as much gear that I have in the room, because then all those will generate sound and generate noise. But if you have a big room, you can get away just placing the microphone right in the middle with any of those treatments.
Okay.
And then another thing that we used to do at school, it was also put blankets around. Like we will use the mic stands or to kind of like just put blankets around. But you don't want also to kill a lot of the noise, because then those natural reverbs, then you'll have to add them, and then sometimes it doesn't sound as natural as the room.
Can you maybe do another session where you talk about how to process vocals once you've recorded them? Because there's like that whole compression thing and all of that. I really don't understand any of that part.
No, we can do recording techniques. We can do different microphones that we want to use and all that. Definitely we can do one just on vocal production.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Angela's like writing it down. She's
exactly, because there's also like the right levels that you should be recording your signal, so you don't go or too low or too hot. So all those things we can talk about it, definitely.
I was going to ask, what type of monitors are those, Janelle? Because I think I have the same one.
These are the HS8 Yamahas.
7s.
Yeah, the 7s.
I think Lordy has a question.
Yes.
See her hand raised.
Hi, Lordy.
And
Hi,
Maria,
Lordy.
sorry, we missed you guys earlier.
You're on mute, I
Oh
think.
yeah, Lordy, you're on mute just in case.
Yeah.
No?
Oh, did she say she had a question?
I see a little hand on a hand icon.
Oh,
on-
on her. Okay,
Is that
Yeah.
the raising your hand thing?
that's a thing now on Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah.
You may have stepped away.
I do have a question,
Yeah.
but I didn't raise my hand.
No worries, you can add.
Does for example, when you buy a microphone, does it also depend on your voice? Do you have to buy one that's gonna work out for you in particular?
Yeah, definitely. There are microphones. You can always look at the specs, because I say dynamic microphones, they work a little more on the low end or the mid range. Some of these, I actually have this microphone. I know that it will boost the high frequencies. This one I don't like it much because it's a little harsh. So all those high end like will sound harsh. And if you have already a voice that is like kind of like high pitch, then those high frequencies will be like super harsh. And sometimes like you can't even, with the cue, you can't even fix them. So definitely it's a little hard now that we cannot go and try microphones. But if you can go out and try the different microphones and have like a little mic run out, definitely it's good because they're going to be different on each voice. Definitely.
So what is like, sorry, I'm like, should I ask? So what is like the spec on the microphone that would tell you that, like the high frequency versus low? What's on the box?
Let's see. Usually on the box, or even like just reading like the specs, Sweetwater, I like it, and Musicians Friends, because they give you a lot of like explanations on how every mic sounds, and you'll see the charts where it has that boost or where it has that cut in the microphone. But usually the oh my god, sorry, the manual, or they will tell you if it's a little more like bright on the top end or if it boosts the low end. Like the SM7B, when you go and see their specs, they like it a lot of for broadcasting or for podcasts because it has a low boost in the low end, so the low mids frequencies come through more, and that's why I like it, because I don't like my voice being so like annoying. So then I like to be a little bit more lower tone. It's the same with some mics that we didn't talk about today. There's ribbon microphones, and they have tubes and coils, and depending on the components, there'll be a little more warmer sound, there'll be a little more dedicated to the high frequencies, and others to low frequencies. Like there's microphones that are just for kick drums, and then those are the ones that you're going to use for the kick, because then they have that boost on the low end, and then they have a good representation of the low end. And there are other for snares, so they have like better on the meats. So definitely you can always like read every single mic. It's kind of like annoying, but but I always do my research before. My wife gets annoyed because I always spend like weeks and weeks of research before buying anything. But a good vocal microphone that will pretty much like work for any vocal is an SM58, Shure SM58, and it's a dynamic microphone, so you don't need phantom power. It will reject the noise around you pretty much, and it's a really good vocal microphone. It's
SM58.
SM58. I have it on the slides, which I'm gonna, let me see.
Oh
if
yeah,
I-
sorry, Janelle. A couple of people asked for the slides. I think Malika asked, but she said she also had to go eat, so we can send it to her.
I'll put them here on the chat, and I also send them on Discord,
Okay.
just so I don't forget.
Now, let me put a link for Discord.
Let me actually.
And Lordy asked. Raise her hand. Lordy asked, live in an apartment and have a limited amount of cash. How could I build a recording studio?
Well, it will all depend on what you're trying to do. So if you want to record your vocals, you're gonna need at least an interface with at least like one or two inputs. And let me see if I can share my screen here. We have where are the interfaces here? We have the Focusrite. They start at 159 for two inputs. There's also the Behringer that it's like 119, but they actually have one that it's like with just one input, and it's I think like $60, and it's a really good like starting point if you don't want to break the bank. And then maybe consider using headphones for now instead of monitors. But there's also some really cheap monitors like the M Audio that are good. Like I think for a pair you can get it for like $150. And they're very like good low budget speakers. It won't have a flat linear response, so you have to make sure that you know how your speaker sounds. But it all depends of what you want to do. If you want to make just beats, or if you want to record yourself, or if you want to record more than one instrument. how low you can get. You can pretty much like build a recording studio for under $500.
Yeah, like I know with I had like four, what are they called, Janelle? Channels, like in the back, those
Yeah.
things. Yeah,
Mhm.
so I know like two of them are for like microphones, but I've only ever used one microphone ever.
Exactly.
And like I've never really plugged in any instruments. I've only like plugged in my MIDI, which is like a separate cable. And yeah, I remember like using GarageBand, Lordy, if you have like a MacBook,
Yeah.
GarageBand is free. And so is like the light version of Ableton. So yeah, I
Exactly.
could totally like do it with just like a free
Mhm.
DAW and like some, I would say get some decent headphones if like
Exactly.
that's what I would invest in, like headphones, if that's what you're gonna like monitor and track through. Yeah.
And the Presonus interface, it comes with the software, with the Presonus software. So if you don't own a Mac and you have a PC, you can always get that interface and maybe get the one with two inputs. And I think it's like around like 100, 120. And it'll have the recording software. It'll have all the plugins, synthesizers, so you can at least start recording and making music. And also consider maybe getting some of this like smaller version keyboards, which this one I think it's this is the older version. There's a new version which has control over the modulation and the pitch, and it's I think it's like around $119 or $99 right now. So there's a lot right now is the time to buy everything because they have so many sales going on for Christmas. So a lot of these things are like, I think this one I saw the other days for like $89 or something like that. So that's a really good starting point. Like,
Just to kind of piggyback on the budgeting, like how to build a studio for a budget, what can you buy used versus what should you absolutely buy new?
um, wow. Used, you can buy sometimes MIDI keyboards. Um, but I had a few bad experiences when I bought a few things used. Because they might tell you if it doesn't, like sometimes like reverb or I think what's it called, eBay will sell used things, but make sure that you can return it, that it has a return at least like a 14 or 30-day return policy. Because I bought a spare of speakers, and when I went to the guy, that's another thing, like if you go to buy speakers that are used, you have to make sure that you tell them just play the left and just play the right, because they might crank that volume and it's like, oh, it sounds amazing, and then when you get home one of your speakers is not working or the tweeter is blown up. So I would definitely buy maybe a MIDI keyboard or maybe a microphone, but just make sure that you can return it. I wouldn't buy maybe gear over unless you can go and try it. That's the only way I will buy use gear. But sometimes like musician friends, Sweetwater, and all these stores that you can go, they actually sell used instruments. Um, but then you can go there and try them, and then they guarantee that it's gonna work. Because I bought like used microphones. I bought used outboard gear, synthesizers, and they work perfect. But when it comes to speakers and maybe microphones, you have to be a little careful with that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, make sure that you can or return it or you can try them.
Does Amazon have like good used devices that they guarantee?
I think Amazon, I wouldn't buy used things from them because my sister actually the other days bought something and she could not return it, and she hasn't heard from Amazon, which is really weird. And it didn't work. I think she bought some, I think it was like a sound bar or something like that, and she bought it used and it didn't work, and she hasn't heard from Amazon. So I will go maybe to, I think it's reverb.com or Sweetwater or Musicians Friends, that they do sell equipment, and then just make sure that they at least they have a 14 or 30-day return policy. So at least you can return them.
I just want to apologize for eating. Also, I'm starving.
Oh, are you eating again?
I know, I just ate yesterday. What's wrong with me?
Exactly.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any other questions just regarding like home studio stuff? Lordy, did we answer your question at all?
I think so. I remember hearing about I forgot what it was called, the recording thing.
The interface.
Yeah. And what else is needed?
So at least to start, if you already have the computer, you're gonna need an interface if you want to record vocals or if you want to record any other instrument. You play guitar, and you'll need at least a good pair of headphones and maybe some kind of MIDI keyboard, which is not really necessary because this is just pretty much a giant mouse with functionality. It's like, so you can program everything, but if you feel like you want to play better, then you can get like some kind of like little guy like this one.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Will the recording be emailed to us?
Yes.
I guess.
And then I also just put on the chat the PDF for that, and then you have a list of equipment with kind of like the prices, and all these are budget friendly and good. They're very good budget friendly equipment. But at least like you can build anything with like $400 to $500.
Yeah, I think when I first bought all my studio equipment, I spent like $1,000 and I got everything. And then I had that same equipment for almost like 8 years or more, and it lasted me.
Yeah.
So
I've been having even this microphone, sorry, that I have here. This microphone, I was very surprised. It cost me like $50. And so I bought another one because I was like, it's an MCA SP1. And this microphone was only like $50, and it's a very good microphone for the price. I used it a lot to record a lot of the podcasts for JP Morgan, and my friend was like, I have like no problem with your microphones or your interface. And then the interface, it's an 8 input interface, and it cost me maybe like $220. So I've been building up, I've upgraded to other things, but I've been using a lot also Behringer, which a lot of people hated, but now Behringer has bought so many companies that they're doing a lot of really good equipment. These little guys are a pair of stereo small diaphragm condenser, and I think the pair maybe was like $80 to $100 or something like that. And it has a low cut filter. It has a lot of like other features, a -10 dB if your signal is too hot. And I've used it last time I recorded. I used all these microphones when we did that recording, Talia.
I remember. Yeah, it was a huge jam
and
session.
it came out really good. Yeah.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah. When I was in New York.
Yeah. And when Janelle was in New York, she's actually zooming in from Florida.
Yeah.
It's one good thing that came out of COVID. Janelle got to join us for our sessions.
Yes.
So oh, sorry, go ahead, Janelle.
No, I always say like just read the reviews, read what other people have to say like about like all this gear, and just make decisions based on your budget. But if you have a little more to spend, I will always just spend that extra and get it right.
What review sites do you recommend? Not all review sites are created equal.
No, yeah, I like Gear Slots a lot. There's also I go a lot into like Sweetwater Musician Friends, because they have their experts, and you can even ask questions to them, and they're very helpful and knowledgeable. but Gearslot is one that I always go to, and I think it's Computer Magazine. I should have made a list of those. I can also like send some
Discord.
on Discord. Yeah, everyone's on Discord already.
I'll send the link just in case.
Because then over there we have discussions about any questions that you have. You can always type in on Discord. If you have music that you want to share with us, you can always share that music and receive feedback or whatever you guys need. You can ask Janet some music theory questions.
I just clicked on it and it says invite failed. Do I just continue to Discord?
Let me try one more time. Oh no, mine accept invite. Did it just say invite failed? Let me try. It says your link invite. Oh, maybe it's because here, just click on this latest one, the second one. Try it. Again.
It's opening. No.
No?
Invite invalid. This invite may be expired or you might not have permission to join.
Okay.
Interesting.
Oh, let me just like set up a new.
Let me do one to see if I can do it.
Okay, one more time. Actually, that's the exact link, but I don't know. Maybe it'll work. I don't know. Try it one more time.
And I have a question about, no, it's just invalid. And I have a question about, I saw that you have so besides the mic, you also have another device. You were talking about another device that you
Thanks for watching.
Oh, sorry. That was me or you? Let me send you this invite. Sorry.
Sorry, I love it when YouTube just starts playing out of nowhere.
Okay, let's see if that invite works. So what was your question?
So I saw that you guys, no, I see the same message.
Yeah, it's weird.
No, so basically, I saw that you were talking about another device besides the mic. So you connect, there's a device between the mic and the computer?
Yeah, so you can get a USB microphone, so you don't need an interface for that. But sometimes like the USB microphones, they will introduce some noise, except for those two that I like a lot that I've already tried with the computer, and you can plug them in directly. They'll be on the PDF that I put on the chat, but you'll need an interface, sorry, because the microphones have low level signal, and then they have to be connected into a preamp, which is a component that the interface has, and then that will turn that acoustic signal into a digitized signal that will go into your computer.
And then it'll like boost the hell out of it.
Exactly. And then you can boost the signal with that little knob with the mic pre.
And is that how then you can add filters and stuff like that on GarageBand, for example?
Exactly. Once you record that signal, then you can process it on the computer or on any software.
Okay.
How important isn't that the interface, like the quality of the interface? Because I think I have like an old one that is basically for like podcast or something that I've been using for a while.
Well, the interface, I would say if you can get a higher quality preamp, I would totally recommend it, because some of these preamps, if it's like a really cheap interface, will introduce noise, or some of them, like the most expensive ones, they have like their flavor, they have like their warm tones, or they have like their specific characteristics. And the universal audio, it's a really good interface. It's on the $900 or $800. But also the Scarlett, the Focusrite has really good preamps, and you can get I think 8 inputs for like $500, or a 2 input for like around 150 or 160. So those also have like good quality preamps as well, the Focusrites. And the Personas as well. They have really good pre's.
Yeah, I remember I had like an M audio interface, and then I got the Apogee, and it was just like,
oh yeah, you see the difference.
So much, yes, so much better. I don't know like what part of it made it do that, but definitely the Apogee was like more expensive.
Yeah, the Apogee also, it's kind of like in the 700s or something like that.
I bought it for like 600. I remember like five.
Exactly.
So I don't
Yeah,
know.
definitely they have better qualities, preamps. The more you spend, you'll have better components, better preamps. The SSL actually, it's around like 200 and around like 200, 300. I think it's on sale for 220 right now. And they have the SSL preamps, which I like a lot. And then they'll come also with a lot of plugins. Like will come with the SSL plugins that everyone loves from the console as well. But the SSL, it's a cheaper, good quality interface as well. But the Focusrite, there's a lot of home studios are using that one at this point. And I also use the Behringer Euphoria, and I have no complaints on that one. Actually, the preamps are very clean. My friend has the Universal Audio 8 with 8 mic pre's, and when he saw mine and then he heard the pre's, he was like, "Oh wow, this only costs like $300." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I paid mine for like 4,000 plus all the features that it has also."
This is a home studio, not a professional studio.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure in like professional studios, like everything costs like, yeah, the
Yeah.
equipment goes for like thousands and tens and thousands of
Exactly.
dollars.
But the ones that I put on the PDF, those are really good budget with high quality pre's. Like you can definitely consider. I didn't include the Apogee because I tried to like, and it go to a lot of stores and it wasn't available right now. But the Apogee also, it's another good option.
Yeah, thank you for putting that list together. That's so useful,
Sure.
so helpful.
Anytime. And if I like next time, I will do like the second tier of prices. So if you feel like you want to spend a little more, then because there's like really nice speakers out there. It's like the ADAM, the Janelle are really good speakers. The makeHers. I have a set of makeHers also in the closet that I have to put out. And those are also like super flat linear response. But then they start at like $600-$700 each speaker. So for a set, they can start at like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, or even more. The Janelle for a 3-inch woofer, they start at $400 each speaker. So, but they sound amazing.
One day we'll get there, Janelle.
Exactly.
Awesome.
But yeah, but right now it's like the most important thing I would say it's like always reference. So you can get that professional sound.